Writers, what makes you weird? Is it something that fills you with pride, or something you try to hide, or a secret you're constantly working to cover up? In today's episode, I am so excited to sit down with the brilliant author Allison Landa, whose memoir, Bearded Lady, takes us on a raw and transformative journey of self acceptance, societal judgment, and the complex relationships we have with both our inner and outer weirdness. We dive deep into the moment when Allison realized that this was a story she had to tell, the struggles and triumphs of shaping her narrative, and the powerful impact of shame on how we move through the world. We'll also explore the tough yet revealing moment when Allison's mother discovered a published excerpt of the memoir where she was at the center of it all. Whether you're a writer or simply someone who wants to connect with a compelling story of resilience and identity, this conversation will inspire and resonate with you. So grab your pen, open your heart, and get ready to discover not just what makes a great memoir, but the deeply human stories we all carry within us. Welcome to Writing Your Resilience, a podcast for writers who want to create stories that change lives, especially their own. I'm your host, Lisa Cooper Ellison. As a writer and trauma-informed writing coach, I'm here to guide you on a transformative journey through the art of writing, self-discovery, and resilience. Each week, I'll share my best tricks, tips, and strategies to help you write more authentically, craft deeper, truer stories, and overcome the common storytelling roadblocks we all face. Together, we'll explore how to bounce back when life gets tough and stay connected to your inner calling. So grab your pen, your notebook, and an open heart. It's time to do the work that changes the world, one story at a time. Hey writers, it is Lisa Cooper Ellison here, and I am so excited to invite you to a special webinar I will be teaching on Wednesday, May 28th. It's called The Art of Reflection in Memoir. And if you've ever struggled with weaving deep personal reflection into your memoir or personal essay, this is the workshop you've been waiting for. I will guide you through practical tools to transform raw emotion into powerful storytelling, all while staying true to your voice and your experiences. This 90-minute webinar includes a transcript, workbook, and extensive Q&As, and it's just $25. That's right, it's only $25. And while the price is low, attendance is a huge investment into your writing life. So I hope you'll join me on May 28th and make your memoir not just a story, but a transformative experience for both you and your readers by signing up today at janefriedman.com or just clicking on the link in the show notes. I hope to see you there. Well, hello, Allison. I am so excited to have you on the Writing Your Resilience podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure is mine. I was so excited when I saw you at the San Francisco Writers Conference, which was back in February of 2025. And I got to hear you read from your book, Bearded Lady, which I'm going to hold up for people who are seeing this on YouTube. And oh my gosh, I fell in love with your voice. And I knew immediately I wanted you to be on the podcast. And I always like to begin by giving people a chance to say what they'd like us to know about the book and also about you.
Other than I'm 5'0" and can barely reach the top shelf, the book is basically about what makes you feel weird in the world. What are you thinking about when you walk into a room? What are you self-conscious about? What do you carry with you in the world that makes you feel like you're a different person than other people, that you stand out, that you're going to be seen or judged somehow? And I feel like everybody has that.
Yeah, weird in the world. And I think that's one of the things that I really connected with in this book. My weirdness was different than your weirdness, but I think there's something that happens when you walk in a room and you're wondering what people are saying about you, how people are thinking about you, and also the story you tell yourself about who you are in relation to their responses.
Yes. Obviously for me, it was very dark, obvious facial hair. We'll get into that. But it was basically just what makes you feel different and kind of out there to be judged.
I think that was one of the things that really struck me about this book was the cruelty of adolescence. And I think that entitlement that people have to know your story, to ask you questions like, what's going on with you? Or tell me the reason why X, Y, and Z is happening to you. And I saw that so flagrantly through your book. And yet I also know this is what people do and that it has a profound impact on us.
Very much so. And I've never heard it described so well. Like, it is a definite entitlement to information, it's an entitlement to lack of privacy. And it's sort of seeing somebody as coming out into the world to be asked questions, which is really scary. That was really frightening to me, especially as a kid.
Yeah, I was trying to inhabit this narrator all the time, which you make so easy because of the way you write. I mean, you're an incredible writer. People are going to get to hear some of your voice today. But yeah, when I was thinking about especially those school experiences, just the things people would say and how you and I talked before, and you said this in your intake, weirdness is what unites us. And yet, there were so many ways that what I saw in this book is that weirdness was what separates us. How did you reconcile that when you were writing this book?
God, that's a great question. Well, there's a something to being united and separated at the same time simultaneously. There's a thread there that sort of ebbs and flows. I mean, for example, when friends would ask, how are you? What's going on? There was a union of some sort because there was concern, there
Right.
was connection, but then there was also me pulling back a little bit. So it was my perception of being weird. And I think, honestly, I was the one who judged myself more than anyone else did. I hope that comes clear in the book. Like, I was very self judgmental. And no matter what anybody said to me, whether it was good or bad, I would take that as a personal thing, as a judgment. You're weird, you're weird, you're weird. And I feel like that, in a way, being close to somebody also meant that I was pushing away from them. So it would unite me with somebody, but it also really, really push me away from them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I was cheering all the time for your friends that stuck with you through everything. And yeah, I think that when we carry shame, especially about anything, it impacts our capacity to be seen, to be helped, to have people be a part of our story. And, at the end of this book, I always read things, beginning to the end. So I'm looking at acknowledgments, and I'm going to find it actually. So this is in the acknowledgments. It says, and to Wesley Gibson, brilliant rat bastard, for your proclamation of sweetheart, go for it. I did, Wesley. I did. So at what point in your writing career did you know this was a book that you had to write? Because I always feel like, especially in memoir, it's not just, oh, I want to write this book. I'm haunted by something that I have to write. When did you know that? And how did you know this was going to be a linear narrative versus all of the different structures you could have chosen?
I feel like I decided, no, it decided me. I remember standing in the grocery store one time, waiting to be rung up and thinking, oh God, am I going to be misgendered? And at that point, I knew this is my story. Like, this is what I want to put out into the world. This is something I need and want to say. And that really firmed up when I was in graduate school at St. Mary's College of California, which is where I met Wesley. And he was my mentor. He was amazing. And he really cemented that for me. I was in a workshop with him, and he said, I'm going to do something we don't often do in graduate school for writing, and we're going to ask you to write. And I want you every week to add something, to add a chapter, add a paragraph. And I thought, oh shit, I've got to write this. And then I thought, I don't know how the hell I'm going to do this. And I thought, if I don't do this now, I never will. And it's a great question about structure. I played with so many different elements of structure. I played with braided narrative. I played with different contextual ways of telling the story. I had a character called the girl who is not me, who I eventually killed in the book. And my husband read it and said, you don't need any of that. You have a story. Tell your story. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. Tell my story. And I thought, there's enough complicated stuff here that I think a straight linear narrative is the way to go. And so after all these different ways of messing with, I mean, this book took a long time to come into fruition, and I messed with it, messed with it, messed with it, finally made it a linear narrative, and it just worked so beautifully. It was like, wow, okay. It was almost as if I had to go through and write all these different ways of doing it to come into the way that worked best for me. And that was just a straight linear story.
I love that story that you just shared about structure because so many people ask me this question. I bet you get asked it too, because I know that you also teach writing. Like, what
I
is the
do.
structure for my book? Or what's the right structure? And what you did is you played. You gave yourself permission to play around, to try different things, to not be bound to what would be the quote unquote right answer. And then it led you to the right answer. And I love this as a straightforward linear narrative because when I think about, how do I want to connect with a book like this? Yeah, I want to learn things, which you do teach us some things about what was going on with the narrator medically. But more so, I want to connect at a heart level, right? And, we
Yes.
think about things like shame or we think about resilience. Sometimes that straightforward linear narrative that keeps you in that heart space allows you to connect with the reader in a way that some of these, what I call fancy structures, can't do. Because, like, sometimes when you get an essay collection that's really thinky, or you try to do a mosaic or something that's fractured, or some of these, more complicated structures that people sometimes use, they can be great for certain things. But I remember Carmen Maria Machado, I was reading this interview that she had done about her book, In the Dream House, which is a gorgeous book. And oh my gosh, I saw her deliver a keynote and I could not keep up with her. Like her mind was like so fast and just does so many brilliant things. But one of the things she said about that book, which deals with a lot of really hard topics, is that she wanted to keep the reader in their head. And the more complicated the structure, the more likely you are to stay in your head. But
Right.
you let us stay in our hearts, which lets us touch your heart.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Like that, that's what I wanted. I mean, a story is not just told by the author, a story is also told by the reader. And I wanted to sort of leave a lot of it in the hands and the hearts of the reader. I didn't want to overtell the story. I've read a lot of books that really sort of overwork the dough, if you will, and just really tell the story too much. And it's like, no, 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 don't do that. Just leave it in the hearts of the reader and let them figure it out. And they will. I mean, readers are smart, they'll get it. And our hearts are smart and they get it too.
Absolutely. And I love this idea of overworking the dough. And we don't have to slam anyone's book here, right? I'm not into that. But I think sometimes we can talk about this is what overworking the dough looks like. So, is there a book or something you're thinking about, even like, writing that students have done where it's like, okay, this is what overworking the dough looks like or sounds like?
I've definitely worked with people who had a structure that was a little bit more scattershot, if you will. I'm going to write about this and I'm going to write about that. And it was almost like the popcorn version of a story. And it's like, that's great, but it's not, you need a little bit more restraint. We do need to make decisions about what we want the reader to know, to understand, to feel. I think things do need to be curated. I think things that look deceptively simple are not. If the dough is overworked, sometimes you can really taste it in the cookie. I mean, it's really challenging. And that's not to say that I don't love other types of structures, because I do. I'm a particular fan of the braided narrative. I really enjoy flashing back and forth and doing that. But I think everything needs to be in service of the narrative. And if
Yes.
you're just playing with it, that's awesome. Play away. I tell my students all the time, like, throw it on the page. Don't hold back. But when you're editing, there's a real curation process that I think absolutely has to happen, regardless of what structure you choose.
Absolutely. There has to be a lot of restraint. And yes, things that look easy were often really hard to pull off. You did this so well and you allowed us to stay in our hearts. And I want to get back to that shame piece because for me, when I was reading this book and was thinking about, what are the threads that are kind of being pulled through this, there's this thread of being seen and not seen, right? This desire to be seen by parents who will attend to what's going on with you, or, love interest. And yet also this need to defend against being seen in these ways that are unwanted, which often is around shame. And so when you were writing this book, what role did shame play in both just things you had to confront inside yourself as you were writing, and also what you wanted to put on the page?
Oh, that was all over the place. Shame is so characteristic of our culture and of us as human beings. And especially when it comes to something like this. And what I chose to do is use it for the narrative rather than try to like push it away. I wanted to use it in a way that was really effective. Okay, it's kind of like putting it back at the reader and asking the reader, well, what shames you? What makes you feel that shame? What makes you feel that difference in who you are and how you show up in the world? And in being seen and not being seen, I think is a huge part of the narrative as well. I mean, obviously, my parents were not good at seeing me, and they were certainly not good at seeing what I needed in ways that my friends did see and did call out. And yes, it was a challenging thing to hear, but it was also, I think, a good thing to hear. And then later on, the world would like call it out. The world would kind of call out, like, you need to do something, you need to do something. But in the end, it was just me that decided I needed to do something. It wasn't because anyone in the world shamed me into it. So ultimately, I think that I use shame as something that it's not something to look for. It's not something to go, oh, shame me, please. Like,
Right.
I don't think that that's helpful. And I never even wanted to shame my parents. It was like they had their own issues.
Yeah, and that's what I see in this book, is that everybody's operating from their own space of pain.
Yes.
And then it's just how that pain intersects and interacts with each of the characters that leads to various results.
Exactly. And I always say everybody's got something. And when I talk to people about the book, it's like, look around this room. What do you think people have here? Because we're not the only ones. You know, it's funny because you'll meet somebody and you get to know them and it's like, "Oh, you really see what makes them tick." And you really see what troubles them. And that's what really brings you close to them because you can feel less alone. It's like, oh no, you have something too. Like there's an empathy that arises with that. And I have empathy for my parents too. I mean, my mother also had what I have, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, but she was not treated, she was not diagnosed, and she had a far less serious version of it than I have. You know, I don't want to like shame her. In a way, she didn't want to shame me by talking about it. I mean, I really believe that.
As we're having this conversation and I'm thinking about your book, I'm wondering if, and this is not to let her off the hook by any means, because there's things that happen that were not okay, but that if she had acknowledged what was going on with you and she had treated it, she would have had to acknowledge that in herself if she had acknowledged it in you. And that might have compounded the shame that she already had that she was operating from.
That's a really good point, and I think it's not letting her off the hook. I think it's just seeing her as a person. And that's something that I really had to do in the narrative itself. When I first wrote this book, my mother was a caricature. I mean, my mother could be very big in her personality and she could kind of come off almost caricature like. And it took some doing to nuance her and to understand, well, she had her reasons for doing what she did and what she did not do. And it actually really was important to me to sort of understand that because in a way it lets me off the emotional hook of being angry and resentful. It's like, maybe she just was a person like everybody else. Same with my dad, and let it go. And that's taken a really long time. I mean, I moved out of my childhood home when I was 18. I'm coming up on 51, so it's been some time. But it's happened over time, which is really great.
Isn't there something good about being, I'm almost 51 myself.
Hey, awesome.
if you don't mind, what month is your birthday in?
I'm April 15th.
April 10th. So
Hey,
we're both Aries.
Aries.
I
Yes, that's
love that.
awesome.
Yeah, so we bring the fire.
We do.
Right. It's the badass piece of us.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought that to this in both seeing your parents and also you just have these really succinct ways of describing them and creating this shorthand that helps us see their characters, see who they are without telling too much of their story, which I think sometimes, when we have parents in particular who behave badly, right, from dysregulation or all the variety of reasons why people behave poorly, we can begin to tell a lot of their stories, which are not, we don't have permission to tell. And you don't do that. Like you give us enough to humanize them, to treat them with compassion. We see both bad behavior and context for that behavior. And also we see their pain. But I love the way you write. And that's what made me fall in love with your work. It made me want to have you on the podcast. And I'm wondering if you can read the first couple of pages so that we can get a sense of these characters.
I would love to. This is my copy, and it's like all done up with all the different sticky things that I always wanted to put on there for readings and stuff like that. I always wanted to. I'd go to readings and I'd see an author with all these like sticky notes, and now I have my own book with one, which is really cool. So I will go ahead and read from the first couple pages of Bearded Lady. 1985. Don't expect to understand my family. You'll have better luck comprehending the history of the Middle East or a Rubik's Cube. The answers there may not be formal or finite, but they at least exist. When it comes to my family, there are few answers. We live in northern San Diego County, a casually affluent burn zone decorated by waves of red tile roofs. Here people think they can beat the inevitable by waving magic wands, money, image, designer dogs. Sometimes it works. Sometimes they wind up with their homes reduced to ashes. My parents have charm. They use it as a strategy, a way to beat back the flames. A grin can flash into something darker or remain in sunshine. You never know. My mother is Joan, but I occasionally call her Nails. She has talons the shade of blood and hair the color of rust. She is prone to crying fits and lengthy explanations. These ride on one premise. Once she had dreams, then she had kids. She regrets moving here from the East Coast. She claims my father forced her into it so he could pursue his perversions. He wants to do threesomes, my mother says, speaking in italics. Wife swapping. I tell him he can play a nice game of hide and go fuck yourself. My father is Steve, but I often think of him as the rooster. His comb-over flaps in the wind. In the outside world he is cordial. At home he can be even every bit as aggressive as the barnyard animal. His eyes are black as midnight. When he yells they turn almost violet. Violet and violent. Somehow these two came together to form me and my brothers. I am 12. Middle, so-called, because he is the middle child, is 11. Jonathan is a year old. He is the accident, or if you'd rather be more tactful, the surprise. When he pisses me off, I call him the birth control poster child. It doesn't seem to faze him. Middle and I go to public school, but in the county's best district. In school, the teacher asks, "What does your father do?" My classmates answer, "Doctor, plumber, pro football player." Then it is my turn. He drinks beer, I say, and watches Hill Street Blues. Later, my mother explains, "Your father is an engineer." When I ask what that means, she shrugs. It's not that she doesn't know. It's more like she doesn't care. I imagine him at a desk doing something called paperwork, just as he does in his den for hours with the door shut and locked. Engineers must take home a lot of work. It must be important, just as our homework is important to us. I know why work is important. It makes you money. Money means a lot to Nails and Rooster. It's how we have our house, and our house is serious business. It's a style my mother calls French country castle. She has a name for it. Jostelaggio. Joan, Steve, Allison, Middle, Jonathan. The house has a persona all its own. It is haughty in a laughable way, too big for its own britches. It is high on its own square footage. It prides itself on its prestige.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
You pack so much in. We get the whole lay of your family land, like who's there, what are they like, How does the narrator interact with them? Then you have this beautiful metaphor of like the burn zone. And then you have these nice descriptions of like the blood red nails, the rust colored hair, the violet and the violence, right? And all of those things are related to colors of fire. So I mean you pull all of that together so well. I'm curious, how many times did you have to write that?
That was actually something that came out fairly quickly and stayed fairly consistent, just because that was my opening salvo. Like, that was what I wanted people to know. And I absolutely agree when you talk about parents, and sometimes you tell the backstory that doesn't necessarily need to be told. I mean, I've read a lot of books where it's like, well, my grandmother was born in 1846. It's like, oh God, I got to get through this to get through you, to get to you. Okay. So I want to just get there. And it was important to me to introduce the setting. It was important for me to introduce the stakes. And I'm a super impatient person. If I can't see that in a couple of pages, as they say these days, I'm DNFing it. I'm just not going to finish it. And so I really wanted to make all those things clear straight away. I definitely wordsmithed it, I definitely edited it. But it kind of came out and stayed the way that it stayed, just because it was something that I thought about so much over the years that it was like, ooh, boom, this is what the way I want to say it.
I love that you trusted that because that's part of that not overworking the dough. Like sometimes things do come out in their best format. Like, the original format is the best format. And yes, you have to wordsmith and do like little things, but to trust that that sometimes is the right way to go. And I think it definitely was the right way to go. I mean, it hooked me. And like you, I can be impatient. I want to know, like, why are we here? Where are we going? And I'm getting ready to write this post for the Jane Friedman blog. So this will have come out by then, and I'll link it. And it's about time. And what I started thinking about was being 6 years old and feeling like time went on so long. Like I actually have this very specific memory of the last day of school and thinking, my God, this year took forever. And of course, now that, everything goes by so fast,
Right.
but my point is, and that I'm bringing into this essay, is that time is this fluid thing. It's an illusion that we create within our stories. And one thing that we definitely don't want to do is give the reader an experience that makes them think the same things I thought when I was in first grade, which is, my God, this is taking forever.
Exactly. Oh, totally. And I feel you on that. I have a 9-year-old son, and he's like, "Man, school just takes so long. This year takes so long." So I totally
Yeah.
relate to you. No, I don't want people to feel that way. And some of the best feedback that I've gotten on this book is that it's actually, I don't want to say a quick read, because when people say that, I'm kind of like, "Ooh, is there not enough substance?" But it's a read that flows, and that's what I went for. It's like, I want a book that you really can like get through and come away with something. I didn't want people to go, "Oh my God," like right now I'm reading a wonderful book that by its subject matter is a really slow read. It's Cold Crematorium. I believe the author is Josef Debrezhny. He was a Hungarian man, and he talks about his time in the Holocaust, and it's like, just by the very nature of the material, it's like after a few pages you just have to stop and reset,
Yes.
and that makes it sort of a choppy read, even as it's a wonderful book. And I had the liberty of, thank God, having somewhat lower stakes, and that I could play with it a little bit, to where it was like, no, I want this to go at a pace where a reader would feel like, hey, I'm right there with you. And I'm keeping up with you. I'm right there with you. And we're just going together. I'm not looking at my watch. I'm not checking my email for the 12th time, which I do so many times. I just want people to like be there and hang out with me while I tell the story.
Well, I can raise my hand and say I was. And I would say it was a pleasurable read. It was a read that when I put the book down in the middle of the next day, I was thinking about your book, what I had read. Is she going to find someone? Like, is such and such going to happen with this character? Like, I don't want to give away things because I want people to read your book. But, there were certain points where I was like, I'm a little worried about her here. And I would be thinking about this in the daytime. And then, of course, at night, you kept me up too many late nights. I'm going to blame you for that.
Well, I hate to say it, but I'm glad. No, I mean, it's the kind of thing where I want people to stay with the narrative, and I want the narrative to stay with people after the book is over. And to me, what's really important are higher themes. That's really essential. I mean, you can tell, everybody's been able to tell a dinner party story, like, hey, this happened to me, and blah, blah, blah. But if I don't have higher themes in there, it's not necessarily going to connect with you and keep you up and keep you interested. And so I really wanted to work those higher themes also because it's such like a, for lack of a better word, it's kind of a weird premise. It's like, oh, bearded lady. Like immediately you think of like circus act and all the shit that goes along with that. And, all the stuff I heard when I was 12. And it's
Right.
like, no, I want it to be as much about you as it is about me. And the way that I do that is to make it a lot more about life than about this one particular thing. Weirdly, I kind of learned that from writing about real estate. I've done a lot of real estate writing in my freelance career, and I would write the same stuff over and over. It's like, oh my God, this is so boring. But really, what you're selling is a lifestyle. It's like, oh, you've climbed to the top, and now you can relish your view. And meanwhile, you're writing about some tiny condo in the middle of San Francisco. But it works.
Yeah, and that sense of striving, I felt that throughout this idea of like, am I going to get to this place? Am I going to get to this place? Or I want these things. And yeah, I think I want to go back to something you said about DNFR, like did not finish reading. The difference between, I think, a book like yours, which in linear narratives, you don't want the pacing to get tired. And I always feel that like, oh, I'm ready for this to be done today. There's that piece of it. But then sometimes there are books where the content is difficult and you have to put it down. Like it is going to be a slow read just because of the content, but that's different from, oh, there's something missing, right? Or too much of something. Because I think of A Fact of the Body by Alex Marzano Lesnevich. For me, that was a slow read because of the content. And it was brilliant. And I loved it. It's a great book, but I had to put it down. But there have been plenty of books that I've read where it's a slow read because I'm bored,
Yes.
because it's lost my interest, and you didn't do that. And I think it's because you added in those higher themes, and because there are ways that you portray your characters and then they change. Like there's these shifts that happen. And when you were thinking about your parents and how they're portrayed on page 1 versus how they're portrayed later on in the book and how you think of them now, how has all of that changed for you?
When I first started writing this book, I was in my 30s. I was unmarried and had no intention of having a child. That's all changed. And so that in itself, just my life circumstances, have changed how I see them and what their constraints were and what they needed to do. I should say what they thought they needed to do and what they thought they needed to escape from. In writing this book, it really helped me to understand everybody has reasons for doing what they do, but only sometimes do they actually know what those reasons are. And I really think that was true with my family. My family was very reactive. It was like, oh, something's happening to her. We don't know what to do about it, so we're not going to do anything about it. I once did a reading, and this little tiny woman who looked like Estelle Getty from The Golden Girls came up to me and said, I read your book, and I want to punch your mother in the face. And I was like, whoa. Okay, well, I actually don't. I mean, that's great, ma'am. You can punch my mother in the face if you want. But for me, it was like I understood, even if I didn't agree with what they did, what their philosophies were around it. I tried to talk to them later on around it, and it didn't really go very far. I sort of handled this on my own, and it didn't really go very far. And I think they were a little ashamed. If you want to talk about shame, I think there was a little shame there. And my attitude is good. There should be a little shame around that.
Yeah, I agree. Because there were times when I wanted to punch your mom.
My mom took a lot of metaphorical punches from readers. It really was funny.
Yeah. I mean, there's just times where I was like, OMG, like what in the world? I did. And then I felt some softness towards the end. I definitely had this transformation, but it wasn't complete. I still wanted to punch her a little. I wanted to punch her a little, and I was like, oh, you need a hug. I want to punch you a little. You need a hug.
Well, I really feel that. I really see that. And I mean, for example, my son has autism and ADHD, and my attitude is I'm going to get out in front of this. I'm going to help him. I'm going to try to make things as manageable for him in his life as possible. And I think my parents did not do that. And so, in a way, I learned inversely from them. I mean, my joke with my husband is, what should I do here? Well, what would my parents do? Let's do the absolute inverse of it. And that's actually been pretty bulletproof, I have to say.
Sometimes that is the best advice and the best way to operate. Well, you shared something at the San Francisco Writers Conference about your mom and this book because people will ask me, like, okay, there's the writing of the book, and then there's the getting the book published, and then there's what happens afterward when people get to read it,
Right.
including family members.
Yes.
Would you be willing to share just a smidge about what that experience was like?
Oh, absolutely. I had an excerpt published online and I put it on Facebook, completely neglecting the fact that my mom was my Facebook friend. So I'm sitting in a cafe and my phone rings and I run outside because I'm that kind of person. I can't talk in a cafe. So I run outside to answer it and she's crying and she says, "It's beautiful." And I almost fell over. I was like, my God, and actually, I believe this was the section that I read that she read about herself. And she said, "It's beautiful." And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like I really appreciated her take on it and her ability to see it for the art that I hoped it was.
That is such a gift. Not everybody gets it, but I am so glad that you did. I mean, that just speaks to her character as well, right? So, there's the negative sides, but also that's huge that she was able to see that as beautiful art and appreciate it versus getting defensive or many of the other responses people might have
Right.
to reading about themselves.
Oh gosh, and I mean it's hard to read about yourself. It's hard to hear about yourself. The same as when you hear your voice on like a recording and you're like, is that what I sound like? It's like, is that what I'm really like? I mean, my son will critique me. He's really good at that. And he'll say like, "Mommy, you try to make people laugh and that's not funny." And I just get really like defensive. Like, really? That's how I really am. Oh my God. So I feel like I mean I give her a lot of credit. My father has not read the book. He wanted to. My brother had it. My father said, "Can I borrow it?" My brother said no because he knew how my dad would receive it, which is to say not terribly well. But my mom took it pretty well, I have to say.
And that says something about your dad that he actually followed through because he could have bought a copy.
He could have. Yeah, but he would have had to spend money. So, I mean, that's a whole other thing. But no, he could have bought a copy and he chose not to. And I think he was respecting those wishes, which I appreciate very much.
Yeah. And that shows that even in problematic relationships, there's still love, right? There can still be love and respect and dysfunction. Like it's not an either or, it can very much be a both and. And part of life is living with that.
Exactly. Things are nuanced. I'm not interested in black and white, except in photography, maybe. Like, things are nuanced. And I like characters who are nuanced. I mean, when I talk to my students, I say, there's characters and there's people. Give me people. Don't give me a character. Give me a person. A person is somebody who's much more filled with contradiction and maybe self doubt and what's weird for them. And those
Yes.
are the people that I'm interested in reading about. So I really got that from my parents who are not caricatures, though they certainly come off that way at times. They are not. And people don't want to read about caricatures, it's boring. So I
Yeah.
really had to nuance that.
And I often find like this is something that I will tell, especially beginning writers. I think that more experienced writers, they've had enough things happen that they get it, that you can't make yourself be like the total good guy who's, the awesome person on the page. And then whoever has done you wrong, usually that's the one who gets this treatment, can't be all evil. Because when you
Exactly.
do that, readers will call bullshit and they'll be like, that's not how things work. And then what does that say about you? And I find for some writers, especially writers who have had really difficult life experiences, where maybe they've dealt with narcissism and they've been gaslit, that's so hard to take in, and yet it's also so necessary.
Oh, very much so. I mean, life is going to do what life does. And our job is to put it on the page as seemingly unvarnished as possible. I really believe that. But I say seemingly because therein enters craft. We do have to think about like how it's put on the page, the fact that there's an arc there, the fact that there is character development there. I mean, I think art and life are sort of kissing cousins, but they're not entirely the same thing. And I've never even thought about that till I just said it, but I think that there's truth to that. I mean, the way that the story comes off in the book, I believe is the emotional truth. But I'm not going to lie. I mean, you write a memoir, you don't know what dialogue was said when you were 12 years old. I mean, there's veracity there, but there isn't always 100% accuracy.
Yeah, and even the truth that we are able to capture is from our lens. It's not capital T truth. And the truth that you capture on the page, 5 years, 10 years from now, is going to be very different. Like the story that you would tell at 61 is going to be different than the story that's published now
Yes.
because life has happened and your lens has changed. And so, yeah, we need to be really gentle with that and allow for some flexibility and allow for really good storytelling. And you and I could be talking about this book and writing forever. I can already tell. And I love that. I'm going to wrap up with two final questions. And one is we are in 2025, which is all the ways that 2025 is. And actually, we're recording this in the last week of March, which March has been bananas in so many different ways. I always ask people, how are you nurturing your resilience? How are you taking care of yourself? And then I feel like right now I'm like Wheel of Fortune, and that, Wheel of Fortune, if anyone has ever watched that show, there's like the final board, and then they give you all the letters that everyone has always said for all of the years. So I'm going to give you that version. Like people always tell me, I go out in nature, I take a hot bath, I journal. I'm curious to know what is and I'm going to use the theme of your book, the weird way that you care for yourself or that you're caring for yourself now in the midst of 2025.
Oh my gosh, what is the weird way that I'm caring for myself right now? Part of it is really being in the midst of it and reading too much, and that's not caring for myself. But it's almost like the way I react to the bad stuff that I do, the doom scrolling, the freakouts, the oh my god, maybe they'll like accept us in Thailand if we can't live here. When I walk away from that and I take a deep breath, it's like, oh, okay. It's almost as if I have to walk through that fire in myself where it's like, oh shit, what the hell is going on? This is insane. And I make no bones about thinking that this is so wrong on so many levels. And I get all head up about it, and then I stop and take a breath. I've done a lot of meditation, also humor. I think that I crack wise about this shit all the time. Trump is going after NPR and PBS, and I posted it on Facebook and I said Big Bird could kick his ass, and I really believe that's true. It's like humor is a huge thing for me. Really being with my family is a big one for me, which is funny because they drive me fucking bananas, but I love them dearly. And being with them, watching dumb shit like Gordon Ramsay. Sorry, Gordon, it's true. Watching Hell's Kitchen, that sort of thing. But also, yeah, taking a walk, being with friends is a real big one. I'm also writing a new memoir about living overseas. I lived overseas for 6 months in 2002, and I'm infusing a lot of talk about like fascism, and I lived in the Czech Republic. So they dealt with a lot of, communism and living
Yes.
under a regime. So I write a lot about that. So part of it is kind of getting in there and kicking around with it. And then part of it's like, oh no, you're not going to do this to me. Does that work? I'd say about 45% of the time, but that's a decent percentage for right now.
Yeah, it is. I don't think that any of us are getting A's.
It's a really good way to put it.
Yeah. And I think if you can get a D plus, C minus, you're doing good.
I'm passing the class.
Yeah. Pass the class. That's enough. And I will say for me, like, I don't think it's weird, but other people might think it's weird, is, I learned this when I got my master's in counseling, like the importance of clearing your energy, because everybody has their own energy. And when you're taking on someone's story, you're taking on a bit of that energy as well. That's just kind of how things are. I am clearing my energy multiple times a day. And what I've learned is because I'm a very strong empath, like I will soak it all in, like all the weirdness, all the like stuff happening out there. If I'm not intentional, I will suck it all in addition to all the work I do with all my clients and everyone else. And so I actually have this like crystal selenite wand that I like. That's my intentional thing I do. And I don't know what my neighbors think of me because I'm always doing it in front of a window because I have an altar, like I'm a Buddhist and I have my altar where I do my meditations and then I'm over there like do do do. But you know what? It works. It's like I got to do me, and this helps me stay present because then I can hold space for other people's stories.
Exactly.
I feel like, all we can do is like be the drop in the bucket. We can't be all of the water in the bucket right now. And so I'm really clear about like, this is how I can be of support and help to other people is I keep myself as grounded as possible. I'm working on my own stuff. When I'm angry, I allow myself to be angry or whatever the emotions are. I'm doing the work so that when I sit in front of you or I sit in front of my clients or anyone else, I can actually sit in front of them and not be in 1,000 other places.
And I want to say thank you for that because that's a great energy to put out into the world. I think that's awesome.
Well, thank you for all you've done with your book. And I want everyone to get a copy because it is truly so beautifully done. So, what are the best ways for people to connect with you, to buy copies of your book, to know what you're up to?
First of all, thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me. This is an absolute pleasure. I would say stay away from Amazon, please. My book is available on Bookshop. It's available on my publisher is Woodhall Press, and they have it available on their website, I believe. But Bookshop is a very good way to get the book. I'm live and online at AllisonLanda.com, and I welcome people to contact me. It's so exciting when somebody contacts me and says, hey, I read your book, or, I've heard about your book. These are the questions or the thoughts that I have. That means everything to me. It's about communication. And my mentor, Wesley, once said, I write to communicate. So I'm very, very open and excited to hear from people. My email is just allison@allisonlanda.com.
Well, all of that is going to be in the show notes. And yes, people should let you know how you're doing. And what I will say about Amazon, this is like the one little thing I'll say about Amazon, is buy the book from bookshop.org. Also, order it from your local library. Like, do those things, but leave a 5-star review on Amazon because those things actually matter.
Thank you. You're right. Absolutely. I think the reviews are very, very important. So thank you for remembering that when I started to let it go, because Amazon is like, Amazon, but it's really great to have the reviews.
It's about, I think, claiming power within the system that is right now, because if you're a writer, it's hard to get your book out sometimes and to get it into readers' hands. And so anything we can do that supports that, I think, is so important. I love that you focus on reader connections because that's what really matters. Numbers are great, like for the number gods, like the people that value that, but at the end of the day, on your deathbed, what are you going to be thinking about? Whatever the metrics were on some day or whatever, are you going to be thinking about my story touched people and these are the things that they said to me?
Amen. Absolutely. Like that's the most important thing to me. And it's like gold when I hear from people. I love it.
All right, listeners, you know what your jobs are, and be sure to connect with Allison. And Allison, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Lisa. It's been my pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Allison and, most importantly, buy a copy of Bearded Lady, please see the show notes for this episode. But before you go, I would love it if you would text the show if you're on Apple Podcast or Spotify, or leave a comment on YouTube with the answer to the following question. What's one weird way that you take care of yourself? I would love to hear your answers so that I can learn some new weird ways to take care of myself. And speaking of your thoughts on the podcast, I'd love to give a quick shout out to Megan Justice and Stephanie Shaffrin for sharing your favorite metaphors after listening to my episode with Erin Caffel, and to Carolyn Ormond for sharing that you are continuing to put one foot in front of the other after hearing Jane Friedman's episode. It was so wonderful to hear from all of you. And listeners, if you haven't contacted the show yet, I'd love to hear from you too. Until next time, remember that your story matters. And as you work on it, you change lives, especially your own. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I truly couldn't do this podcast without your support. If you love this episode, here are 3 simple ways you can keep this show thriving. 1, subscribe or follow Writing Your Resilience on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube so you never miss an episode. 2, leave a 5-star review to help others discover the podcast. 3, join my engaged writing community by signing up for the Writing Your Resilience newsletter. As a thank you, you'll receive a free copy of Write More, Fret Less, a toolkit for gaslight proofing your writing practice. Have feedback for the show, a topic you'd love me to cover, or questions you'd like me to answer? Drop a comment on YouTube, text the show, or email me at writingyourresiliencepodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, keep writing, keep growing, and keep showing up for yourself. Your story matters, and I am so proud to be writing alongside you.